right, for our third video on the sixth commandment, you shall not commit adultery. What does this mean? We should fear and love God, that we should live sexually pure and decent lives, and that husbands and wives should love and honor each other. We're going to talk about, now kind of building on the last video, as you talked about different perversions that we find in our culture that's overly sexualized, how we live in a culture that is full of breaking of the sixth commandment. You know what that leads to? The consequences. This is definitely not a neutral matter. The consequences of living such a way means abuse. Means abuse of one's own mind and abuse of one's own body, and even more so, victims of abuse, and even among children. So here's a sad stat for both boys and girls. Did you know that 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys will be sexually abused by the time they reach age 18? And often it's from within one's own immediate or possibly extended family. 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 5 boys. Did you also know that children are often exposed to internet pornography as early as the age of 9, if not before? Did you know that human sex trafficking is a major issue in our country, happening in almost every town? And that is the kidnapping, the taking of young men and women, boys and girls, and selling them, really, for sexual purposes, whether within our country or beyond. It's a slave trade, and it's happening in boys and girls that are disappearing and ending up on milk carton, their faces. A lot of them are for this reason. What else should we talk a little bit about? What are ways that family can protect itself from sexual abuse, online or off? Do you have accountability online? Do you have software where you can monitor what's going on out of love for each other, not to shame each other, not to invade privacy, but to be honest with you, children should recognize that the authorities over them, in the home especially, are charged by God to understand what's going on and protect their children from these things. So looking at screens, devices, laptops, computers, whatever access you have to online, you should look at that as a loaded gun. Would you just leave a loaded gun just kind of sitting around the house? No, you would make sure it's locked up. You'd make sure that when it's in use, that you are there monitoring and guiding to protect the child from something dangerous. And 2, keep an eye on, hey, has anybody been touching that gun without my awareness? So 2, parents have the right to take a child up through the age of 17, their cell phone, and say, hey, I'm just going to check your texts. I'm going to check your various apps. I'm going to check and keep a record through maybe software like Covenant Eyes, and just see where you're at and what you're looking at and what you're talking about and what pictures you're taking and where you're sending them, and to try to have an honest, open conversation so that if you should catch your child doing something that they ought not to be doing, that you explain why, their sinful nature. You talk about God's design for 6 commandment issues, that God looks to protect this gift for their purposes so that they don't have struggles in their relationships as they get older, and you will have struggles if you abuse this, so that you don't become of a depraved mind and start victimizing and abusing other people, which is possible for anyone. So all these things, right? Talk about how you can protect your family. Are your family members protected when they venture out into the world? Do they have ways of protecting themselves, communicating to you if they're in a situation that they don't feel comfortable in? You can talk about habits. What about spending the night at a friend's house? Is that really wise in these days? Completely monitoring where they're really going and just letting your child know the dangers and why you're looking to be an overseer of their souls to protect them. And again, going back to online screen stuff, to making rules that you're there to protect, like no screens in any bedrooms. only visible screen time. So no sitting in the corner and just looking at your screen so that nobody can get a visual of what is being looked at. Things of that nature. I know it sounds like, oh boy, children they're not gonna be able to have any fun and get away from parents. But the nature of the internet and what's online is just not safe without parental supervision, and that's God's charge. So children are to respect that and to trust that a parent's guidance in this regard is good for them, especially as they look to start their own family. So that's the assignment for today. I really want you to take a look, consider the things I've shared with you, some of those stats, answer any questions that your kids might have, family might have, and see, can you implement better strategies, or at least be affirmed in the strategies you have, where you are keeping track of online activity and out in the world activity of what's going on, who their friends are, the different people that they come into contact with, to protect our children, to make sure that they're always safe, and that this gift of sex is going to be just that for them, a gift. God's blessings on your important conversations in this regard. Let me leave you with this one last thought, 1 Corinthians 6:18. Flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against his own body. So there's this interesting burden that comes on a person when they're involved in some kind of sexual sin. God's blessings again as you converse on this topic, and we'll see you in the next video.